Hi, my name is Adam Wagenbach, a student at Melbourne not high school. Got too used to that. At Skagit Valley College, taking Psychology 100 in winter quarter 2023.
My name is Bella Parent, and I go to Skagit Valley College. I'm a Running Start student, and I'm taking Psychology 100 for winter 2022.
Hi, my name is Cameron Hurley. I'm also taking Psychology 100 for the winter quarter.
Okay, what is psychology?
Personally, I think psychology is the study that delves into the behaviors and mental processes of how different beings act and think in the various stages of consciousness, taking various elements of other sciences like biology and anatomy of the brain and combining them with the actual thoughts happening inside of the head.
Okay.
What did you think, Cameron?
Mine's decently similar to that, but still a little bit different. Psychology is the study of behavior and thought processes, of how any life form thinks, acts, that's also behavior, in all stages of consciousness. This also includes topics of perception, cognition, emotion, personality, social behavior, and mental health, which are subsets of thought because, well, we have to think to do those things. So, for one example, in cognitive psychology, they will study the mental processes such as attention, memory, and problem solving. Or in clinical psychology, where they will focus on the assessment, diagnosis of psychological disorders. And the definition, I've already been exposed to it way before this, so it's about what I expected.
To me, psychology is a scientific study of how the human mind and its functions, and how it functions, as well as human behavior. This includes how people act in different situations and how they act when they are alone with a member of the opposite sex, or how they behave in a group of people their own age. There's much more to it than that, however. Psychology in regards to cognitive functions explains how your brain works and how certain mental abnormalities work. I was not surprised by the definition of psychology. It is, in fact, exactly what I thought it would be. I expected psychology to be about how humans work, and I was very satisfied with what I learned.
For me, I also, when I looked over this course, I assumed it would be about the mind and its various processes, although for some reason I linked psychology and social psychology a lot more. I was ready for more elements of social psychology to be present in our day-to-day instruction. What do you guys think, or why does psychology matter in the world today?
Psychology is still relevant today as it helps improve mental health, understand the behavior of us humans, promote effective communication, improve physical health. Examples are in brown eye, blue eyes. It shows how impressionable we are at early stages of development. Just as how easy it was from that authority figure, the teacher, to make these kids essentially discriminatory against each other just because of the color of their eyes.
To me, psychology does matter today, almost more than ever. I believe that through psychological studies, we can learn how to improve our learning techniques. Learning is, to me, one of the most important aspects of human life, and this closely ties into psychology. Not only are there thousands of studies on brain functions that allow humans to process information, but there's also proven ways to improve your focus and help you with learning. This can be essentially helpful when you have a learning disability, which can make learning extremely difficult for an individual to accomplish. This is important because without learning, you will not be able to function normally.
I thought that psychology essentially makes up society, as society is the culmination of everyone's thoughts and opinions. Additionally, psychology is applicable in everyday life, from meaningless exchanges in passing to heated discussions with the people closest to you. Personally, psychology is an outlet to further my understanding of other people and to see what people don't broadcast in their daily life. The little tics and twitches people make when they are uncomfortable. I feel like I can be a better friend if I know what other people are thinking before they are even thinking it.
In class, we reviewed Pavlov's learning experiment, Phineas Gage's case study, Brown Eye, Blue Eyes, and a experiment done in the 1968 classroom. Milgram's obedience experiment and the Stanford prison experiment, among many others. Why do you believe these classic psychological research experiments and case studies are still used today?
I believe that even though these experiments were wildly unethical, they were able to shine a light on many aspects of human behavior that otherwise would be hard to study. I think that they are used today to examine why some people might act the way they do in different situations that would include high levels of stress. Another reason these experiences in particular are used today is because we cannot replicate them, as they have caused far too much emotional and physical harm to the subjects of these studies.
Are we moving to the 3 different examples of why psychology matters in the world today?
Have you answered for the class, in class?
In class? Why psychology matters today?
No, the obedience experiment, why those classical experiments are still used today.
I'm so cold.
What question is that?
This one?
It's
Well, that one. Oh my goodness. Well, then I didn't answer.
well,
Okay.
you can submit your script, okay?
Yeah, okay. So, social psychology. Well, providing 3 different examples why psychology matters in the world today. Social psychology and conformity matter as a way of solidifying societal norms such as polite greetings or generalizing topics of small talk, defaulting to the weather and such. Also for diagnosing and treatment of mental abnormalities as it pertains to each individual. I know personally just how difficult life is to trudge through with a mental noose tied around one's neck. Throughout society, plenty of individuals struggle with their own internal mental battles, often having it seep into their external lives. Being able to make educated and non-biased decisions when presented with possible stereotyping or conditioned thinking. Knowing just how biased an individual can be wired, then brings consciousness to the adverse effect of altered decision making, allowing for much more sturdy decision making populace, should they choose to be conscientious. In class, we reviewed Pavlov's learning experiment, Phineas Gage's case study, Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes experiment done in Jane Elliott's 1968 classroom, Milgram's obedience experiment, and the Stanford prison experiment, among many others. Why do you believe these classic psychology research experiments and case studies are still used today? Oh, you guys already did that one?
That was the last thing we were just talking about.
Oh my goodness, you guys are way ahead of me.
Oh Lord, sorry, Adam, but oh well.
Well, to be fair, we didn't read the second 2 things for
Yeah, we
the
had
question
our
2.
script a little different, so well, we can keep going then.
Oh, like keep going as in
Keep
skipping?
Keep going.
Oh, me?
Just keep going.
Okay.
You read your
I said simply because of the results and the relevance of each experiment. While Phineas Gage's case study is very specific information, it can be weaned from the psychological damage he sustained into modern diagnosis and treatment of traumatic brain injuries. Pavlov's dogs shows us just how susceptible the mind is to conditioning, which is always going to be prevalent. Everyone would like some degree of control over their dog, their subordinates, their children, especially children. The remainder of the classic experiments listed are clear examples of how quickly society can spiral out of control with discrimination, authority, and dehumanization. We as a society, and as a species, can learn how to prevent such replications outside of a controlled environment. I think I'm caught up with you guys.
I didn't do that one. Yes, what I do.
Okay, then you
Not
go
yet.
get 'em.
Not yet. Also on that one, they are still used as a kind of serve a dual purpose of showing what we shouldn't do anymore, and well, since like Phineas Gage, there's not many times where someone gets something shoved through their head, so it's not the easiest to find. You know,
Thank you.
I did say that one already. I'm a dingus.
I-
Oh well, I said it twice.
It's okay. Yeah. Reinventing your topic. What experiment did you choose again? And you should talk about the scientific approach about it.
Yes. For that one, I was more on the milligram. Since milligrams was decently messed up and not the most ethical. The research question for his experiment was, could it be that Echelman, my pronunciation of that, and his millions upon millions of accomplices in the Holocaust, were they just following orders, or were they just being obedient, or was it something else? That was actually it's actually off of what their article said of how it is. For the hypothesis, they did polling for it, which leaned heavily towards a very small percentage of teachers would not continue towards the final voltage, which they found out later. Oh, someone's fart can exhaust. That's wonderful.
They are so cool.
Yeah, so cool. Well, back to this. The test methods they did. Oh. Well, about that. Let's continue on with this. The type of test it is, an experimenter was in charge, which was like Migrant himself, being in charge of it, prodding and poking them to keep increasing the voltage of it on the learner. Then there was the teacher who was the actual test subject, who thought they were just helping out with the case. They would teach the learner two things of like 2 words, 2 phrases, simple things, and every time they got them wrong on purpose, since they were conspiring with the experimenter, that they would get shocked, but when in reality they're just acting. And then there's the third person, the learner, who was essentially just a friend of the experimenter who was acting like they were being painfully shocked. The variables there was an independent and a dependent, as there always is. You brought coats for me?
I brought coats if you guys are
Going back to this.
Thank you.
The independent variable was the degree of authority, while the dependent was the degree of compliance. What was concluded was the conclusion that I got from this, and also pretty similar to what theirs was, is that the majority of subjects will crave to the commands if they are authoritative enough. And the correlation found is that more vehicles going by, wonderful. A positive correlation between the more authorities exhibited, the more subjects complied, and vice versa, the less they would complied. Even when the victim asked for mercy and said he had a heart condition, they didn't care, because they were being told to keep going. Now on to...
For me, I was looking at the Stanford prison experiment. I thought the research question was if the brutality in guards was a cause of the environment of the prison and all it exposes the individual to, or if it is simply a result of the guard's personality. Same could be questioned about the prisoners themselves. I thought the hypothesis was if the personality traits, or the lack thereof, for both prisoners and guards were to be the cause of the aggressive, abusive behavior in prisons. The type of tests was converting a basement under Stanford University into a mock prison to simulate the psychological effect of imprisonment on both the guards and the prisoners, stripping the prisoners of their humanity and letting guards have essentially free range with their torment. Some of the variables that they had in there was environmental, like the prison cells, minimal comfort, bordering on like inhumane, and the independent holding cell / solitary confinement. Then there was the individuals themselves, those who were the prisoners and those who were the guards. Then there was dehumanization levels, stripping prisoners of their name, giving them just a number, adding silver polarized sunglasses for the guards to wear so that the prisoners couldn't see their eyes. And then the level of psychological distress, just how much distress was shown by both prisoners and guards, and how many showed signs of being in distress. In conclusion, being dehumanized and abused by the guards is very psychologically distressing for the prisoners, and the guards, along with Zimbardo, became very twisted by the environment of the facade, of the prison system, psychological traumatization for the prisoners, period. Some of the correlations that were found, being deprived of human characteristics, the ease and frequency in which abusive behavior occurs is accelerated and heightened. Psychological experiments should be more closely monitored in the future. Individuals can be very impacted by their environment, especially when just enclosed to that environment. Just how much an environment can affect a person is downright incredible.
Okay. I did the Brown Eyes Blue Eyes experiment conducted by Jane Elliott in 1968. She took a classroom full of third graders and segregated them based on her eye color. For the research question, it was, could these children be influenced by their teacher into discriminating against their own classmates? The hypothesis was students would feel like they were, quote, lesser if they had a certain eye color, and their classmates would tease and bully them because an authority figure told them that the eye color determined intelligence. For the types of tests, students were told to discriminate against one another over something that they could not control, in this case, eye color. They were tested to see if being told they were better than others based on their eye color had anything to do with their learning. For the variable, the independent variable was the teacher telling them what to do, and the dependent variable was how the students reacted to the instructions while not being supervised. The conclusions were, the study found that the children quickly formed a sort of hierarchy. The students with the favored eye color would belittle the students with the other eye color, and they performed better than the students with the, quote, bad eye color. Students who had the unfavorable eye color performed worse, and they felt like they were lesser beings than their other colored eye children. Sorry, I messed up on that one. The correlations found were, there was a correlation found between how the students behaved and what the teacher had told them, even though this meant tearing some friendships apart.
You good?
Yeah, I am. I just finished this today, so it's kind of, I didn't really read over it, so I apologize.
We going on to the use of deception?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're on that one.
Okay. Using the same experiment you chose in question 5, describe any use of deception in the experimental design. Explain how deception was justified using ethical guidelines for the experiments by today's standards.
Do you want me to go?
None of the participants were informed of the real purpose of the experiment at the beginning of the milligram experiment, as that would have ruined it as well. They know the shock. If they knew the shock wasn't real, who would care? It's not a real shock that they're getting, and it would change how people are dealing with that. However, it did cross many ethical guidelines of the prods and phrases, not making it seem that the actual subject, the teacher, couldn't leave, as they were phrased. One of the phrases was, "You have no other choice. You must go on." And that was the worst one out of all of them. You have no other choice. There was a previous one that was, "You must continue." There's another one before that. There's many different phrases they used that made it seem like that there was no way out of the experiment, even though there was meant to be, but it didn't seem to the test subjects.
I shall go next. For the Stanford Prison Experiment, each participant, when signing up, was completely informed of what they were doing and just how long they were expected to be there, including that they could leave or withdraw at any time during the experiment. Although unintentional, when a prisoner, I think it was prisoner number 416, approached Zimbardo about leaving because he was getting like a lot of negative attention from the guards. He was essentially persuaded not to leave, and then when he returned to the prison, he misinformed his fellow prisoners into believing that there was no escape from this experiment.
For the Brown Eyes Blue Eyes experiment, there wasn't necessarily any deception because the teacher, Jane Elliott, had told each of the students what the study was ahead of time. However, there was, I might have to cut that part. There wasn't really any deception used in my experiment that I picked up on. And
Yeah.
I didn't write that question down.
She kind of was like, "All right, class, we're doing this."
She was like, "Today we're gonna be
All right, class,
I got
today
this.
we're gonna try and make each other be racist to each other.
right."
Woo-hoo.
You guys want me to read question 7 or 6 or whatever it is?
I think it's 6. I personally am on 6.
The
3
This
lessons.
one?
yeah, the 3 lessons.
Yeah, okay. What are the 3 lessons that you learned in this class that will be applicable throughout your education?
I can't remember which exact lesson numbers they were, but I remember whichever one had psychosexual development as the stages. Even though these were made in the early 1900s, late 1800s, they're still semi-applicable today because you see it in kids in the earlier stages. Like with the I'm trying to remember the first stage. I can't remember the first stage. I can't remember the name the. Do you remember either of you?
The first stage of
Psychological development. I can remember the things about it. That's the one.
Was
Where?
that with Freud?
Yeah, Freud.
Oof.
That's the one.
Oh, with the babies and their sex
Oral.
drives.
Oral.
Oral.
Oral is the first one. Which in oral you'll see babies. It's semi-correct as babies. Well, they are sucking on everything. It exists. You too.
Sorry.
It exists. They will suck on it. So that stage is kind of. In later stages, you'll see. Not the anal one, to be honest. That one's not the most correct, but at the final stage where you start seeing more sexual development, that is semi-correct. Maybe not completely, but it is to an extent correct. And also with the things with not being satisfied causing issues, it's kind of correct, but there's some problems I see with that that's not completely accurate, as there's other factors that probably would cause those mental disorders than that.
Okay. For my first one, for the lessons I can find applicable, I will be able to use the Pomodoro method to help me stay focused. Personally, I find it difficult to stay focused on tasks for several hours straight. Since I learned about the Pomodoro method, I have been able to study in intervals while also being able to see to my other responsibilities without wasting time. For 2, the lesson on memory. I find that actively taking steps to ensure that something is memorized helps me when I'm working on an assignment. When it comes to school, memorizing formulas, formatting, and instructions is highly important. Without it, I start to slip and fall behind. One of the 3 ways that I can apply this is by making it more enjoyable. By making the memorization task fun or pleasurable, I will be able to naturally remember it clearer. Hang on. Lastly, the lesson on behavior. Learning about the different types of behavior can help me understand how I can work peacefully without putting myself in situations where I can be easily distracted or interrupted. If I need to focus on something that's important, being in a group is not the best for me. Working alone can also have its challenges, but I get distracted less when I'm not around other people or my peers.
My turn? Okay. Just want to make note that I completely forgot about the Pomodoro thing, but
I did until, like,
it's
earlier.
genius.
Right? Thank you.
For me, one of the greatest lessons that I learned in this class, and that will be applicable throughout my education, is knowing what medical student syndrome is. Just knowing about it and its adverse effects of automatically assuming that I have mental disorders is greatly inconvenient. So now knowing and being conscious about that, I can be more mindful of different psychological disabilities instead of automatically assuming that I already have them. When I became overwhelmed or stressed or even depressed, I should not automatically assume that I need a professional diagnosis. Instead, I should find my own situational diagnosis, such as a rough breakup causing all these feelings, rather than clinical schizophrenia. Although that would explain the talking shadows. Correlation does not equal causation. Simply due to having a correlation with another thing does not mean that it was caused by that same thing. I cannot blame poor testing ability on eating cereal that morning. Now I have no excuses. Personally, I feel this pairs with making assumptions about people, such as a buddy of mine who is always on his phone at work, while also making the occasional mistake with a cut or like a measurement. The mistakes are not caused by his phone use, they're just something that happens while at work. Above all else, I learned how susceptible people are to outside stimulants, parent expectations, peer pressure, societal norms, stereotypes, etc., and how susceptible I am to those expectations. Now I can be mindful of the pressures that are bestowed upon me, and I can make fully conscious decisions and not always be swayed by the thoughts and feelings of others. I don't want to continue to walk down a path with a closed-off mindset as open as I am. I am still biased. Knowing these biases can help me approach a decision from an alternative perspective, casting off judgment to allow for unadulterated decision making. For you guys, what provided the greatest enhancement to your learning in this course?
It's on this. You'll have to restart again. So this stuff is you start editing.
Oh, okay.
So
Right now?
cut.
Cut.